Okay, we are live on
Today.
YouTube.
Excellent. Excellent.
All right, we are live. Welcome back to the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. It is Wednesday, March 13th, and we are here to vote on H125. I'm Representative Kathleen James, Bennington 4.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Darren Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Faulkner, Chittenden 13. Burlington.
Laura Spilly, Wyndham 2.
Our guests.
Emma Regan, then a Crafton Group.
Charles Martin, Agency of Natural Resources.
Billy Coster, Agency of Natural Resources.
Matt Sorensen, Legislative Attorney.
Great. And Jack.
Jack Locker, Committee Assistant.
Okay, for the record.
Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm here on H125, draft 5.1. Let's see.
Alrighty.
I don't have such a posted yet, but you did great.
It should be loaded.
So, based on what the committee just went through, there's some changes highlighted in yellow. As I discussed on line 7, since this is only a one-time report, it will not be in statute. It'll be a session law provision, so it is no longer going to be in Title 30. It's just a session law provision. Then on line 8, it now just reads on or before December 15th, 2025, because it will not be an annual report, so that reference has been struck. Then down on line 16, the report shall provide data for the previous 5 years. So we struck the reference to the initial report and subsequent annual reports. On page 2, in regards to weatherization services, it now reads the number of homes receiving incentivized weatherization services by income level in county. Then in subsection C, down on line 18, it now reads the report shall include regional distribution and graphic displays of the data compiled. On to page 3. The report shall also include any recommendations for future reporting requirements, including how and when all relevant data can be mapped. And subsection D was removed because that was about permanent reports.
Okay. Questions? Alrighty. I will entertain a motion that committee approve draft 5.1 of H125.
So moved.
Alrighty. Clerk shall commence to call the roll.
Representative Richard Bailey.
No.
Representative Christopher Howland.
No.
Representative Graham Faulkner.
Yes.
Representative Christopher Morrow.
Yes.
Representative Laura Spilly.
Yes.
Representative Michael Southworth.
No.
Representative Darren Torrey, yes. And Representative Kathleen James.
Yes. Alrighty, and Representative Campbell is absent.
Are we allowed to hold the vote open, Madam Chair?
We are not allowed to hold the vote open.
Do we have to stick with this vote, or could we wait since we have
Yes, absent. As a member.
who would support this?
Mhm. I think that ship just sailed. I don't know. Clerk?
We check with it. We check with the.
Yeah, we can check with Betsy Ann. I didn't think about that actually until we were voting.
I apologize, Madam Chair. Held votes before. We'll just. I'm happy to go check with her, or Shall I go check with our manager?
Under Robert's rule would be a motion to reconsider. And under Robert's rules, a motion to reconsider.
We're not.
We're not a Robert rule.
No, because I don't know this Mason's rules.
Mason's, yeah.
Yeah.
As well as I do Robert's rules. But I think under Robert's rules, you could, so the equivalent in Mason's rules is where
Yeah.
to be there.
I
But
think that,
you have to, in order to make the motion, you have to be in the plurality to make the motion to reconsider.
right.
If you're
Um,
minority, you may not. In
Let me go
Robert's
check with the clerk. I think that that's something I should, if we learn as we go, I think that's something I should have thought of before we,
Sorry, Madam Chair.
yep. Do you chat amongst yourselves? We're still live.
Maybe we won't chat amongst ourselves.
rules. But one of the things that I noticed from when we introduce ourselves, we all tend to look to the witness. And when we're on live TV, where the you got, I think I'm trying to talk to the camera when I introduce myself.
Well, you're a TV guy, you know.
Well, it came up on YouTube, some of our sessions.
I think it's probably fair to guess that when we have a witness, there are more people in the witness chair than watching on YouTube.
Well, I've got some comments from the YouTuber live watchers.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there are some out there.
No, this is one. I think they.
Going to another committee.
They don't watch it live, they pick up sessions,
Right, they watch recorded sessions.
recorded sessions,
Yeah.
and they seem to be involved with more than one committee. No. Thank you, people.
Do you know the things for? Review sign off.
Yeah.
So your second bill, I just wanted to check.
Hello.
Have an email pulled up. I'm gonna read behind it right now.
All right, too late, but we can certainly, when we do our floor report, we can certainly report, as I've heard many times, that the absent member was supportive of the bill. So, all right, so the count was
531.
531. Great. And Representative Sebelia, you're the floor reporter?
Thank you.
Great. And we will get this done and submitted, and it will be on the floor next week. So thanks, everybody. We can, I think, just proceed, right? Ellen, does anybody need a break? I feel like we just took it. So, all right. And Daryl, I'll check with you on the process for getting this submitted to the clerk, and Laura takes it here as a floor reporter. All right. Thanks, everybody. Our second bill out and on its way to the floor. That's great. Thanks for everybody's work, and thanks to A&R for all your participation.
Thank you.
Okay, we are starting a walkthrough, which I'm sure will not finish we have you until 11. Okay. So we will now devote the next half an hour to our starting walkthrough of 289. Yes, Rep. Sebelia.
Do you want us to ask questions as we're going through, Madam Chair, or do you want us to get through the wall? Like clarifying questions only, or?
Yeah, I
Substantive, or not?
so that's a great question. We talked a little bit about yesterday about remembering in our question asking that this is not testimony about the bill. Like, we're here with Ledge Council to understand the legal language. So I would say clarifying questions about the legal language as we go along, because it's a long bill and I think folks are going to lose track of their questions. I know I would.
Yep.
And Ellen, if you don't mind, I always think it's really important as we move through the sections to remind our members or tell our members about what section of statute we're working in, what we're modifying, so everybody understands the context. Sure. So, should we pull up 289? I think that might be a good idea on the screen.
I'm uploading it and then I can get it pulled up.
Okay.
If anyone wants a hard copy, I can email Tony. Any hard copy takers?
I've got one.
All right.
I'm good.
Okay.
Do you want me to start? Okay,
Uh-huh.
so, this is H 289 as introduced. An act relating to affordable climate measures. There are subdivision headings, throughout this bill, because it covers a few different topics. So the first one is the first chunk of sections are related to the clean energy standard. So these are a series of changes that are related to changing the name of the renewable energy standard and the substance to the clean energy standard. So first in section 1 is amending 3 VSA 202B, which is a statute that establishes the requirement for a state comprehensive energy plan. The Department of Public Service publishes this report every 3 years. And so there is a change made to the directive in the comprehensive energy plan on page 2. So on page 2, the plan shall seek to implement the state energy policy set forth in 202A of this title, including meeting the state's greenhouse gas emission reduction goals pursuant to 578, and shall be consistent with the relevant goals in 24 VSA 4302, which are the municipal planning goals.
Okay. So I have my first question.
I just let me finish.
You're gonna get there. Okay.
I'm gonna finish the sentence. So it also then strikes out the language referencing the climate action plan. So 2 changes here. It is changing the reference to what we call the Global Warming Solutions Act emissions requirements, changing that to goals, because later in this bill, in the last sort of chunk, there are amendments to the Global Warming Solutions Act, no longer making it a requirement, making it goals. And then it also strikes out the reference to the climate action plan, because it's not a requirement, and changes are being made to the climate action plan as well.
Alrighty. So my question was about the latter part. So I understand that this changes the GWOSA requirements to goals, and it does that throughout the bill. What's the upshot of striking out the reference to the climate action plan?
The upshot?
Yeah, like what? I guess I'm not understanding that connection.
Yeah, I don't think I can answer that question. I think that there are multiple changes in section 15 to how the climate action plan is going to function moving forward under this scenario. So,
I see.
So I think the strike here is 1, severing the comprehensive energy plan from the climate action plan.
Okay.
And that in itself is a policy choice. And I think there could be multiple reasons for doing that, including that the plan really is becoming even less binding than it already was.
Okay.
But this language came to me from the administration, so mostly what I did in this bill was to just align the language with what their overall the goal of the language was. So if you want to hear the arguments in favor, you can hear from the administration.
Oh, totally. Yep. And I know we're not taking testimony. I'm just trying to understand legally. And that was one thing I didn't understand. So that strikeout probably has to do with later language in the bill that reconfigures the climate council and the climate action plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then further down on page 2, for each sector, references are being added to clean energy. So they have to have the total amount of energy consumed, including the amount of clean and renewable energy consumed, and the percentage of clean and renewable energy consumed. And the definition of clean energy is coming up in the next section, so we can talk about that more.
Okay.
And I know this is like not totally intuitive, but it's framed this way because when we are amending statutes, we generally do amend them in a bill in order that they occur, so sequentially, so that we're starting with 202, but a lot more of the changes are happening later in Title 30. So sorry if that's confusing, but that's how we do it. So on page 3, again, we're adding references to something that's going to be talked about in another section. So on page 3, the report shall include the following information on progress towards meeting the clean energy standard, which would no longer be the RES, but the CES. And then the references to the CES are added the rest of this page as well. And then another reference to having data on the required amount of clean and renewable energy.
The upshot of all of these changes is the later in the bill, the changing of the renewable energy standard to the clean energy standard.
Conforming to match that. Yep. Same thing on page 4. So on the top of page 4, the amounts of clean and renewable energy and tradable clean and renewable energy credits that'll need to be reported. And then on line 4, it goes on to say they need to express it as a percentage of total megawatt hour purchases made by Vermont retail electricity providers to meet demand. Changing it from retail sales and total load to megawatt purchases. I don't know why they would make that change.
Okay, I was looking at you to say, so legally, that's a policy thing that we'll have to learn more about. Okay.
And then further down on page 4, more references to the RES are changed to the CES. And then on page 5, we now get to the definition of clean energy. So first starting on line 11. So now this is section 2. It's an amendment to 30 VSA 8002. So this is in the renewable energy program chapter. And so 8002 is the definition section. Number 7 is an existing definition to environmental attributes. These are associated with the generation of power. And so this is how RECs are generally identified. So environmental attributes means the characteristic of a plant that enables the energy it produces to qualify as clean or renewable energy, and includes all benefits, any and all benefits of the plant to the environment, such as avoided emissions or other impacts to air, water, or soil that may occur through the plant's displacement of a non-clean or non-renewable energy resource. Then as a definition of clean energy. So clean energy means both renewable energy as defined in this section, as well as electricity produced using a technology that does not emit greenhouse gases as a byproduct of energy generation.
Okay. Your comment.
Yeah, Rep. Putnam.
Thank you. So I believe the current definition of renewable energy that we use includes solar, wind, hydro, and biomass. Can anyone confirm that?
So the definition of renewable energy in this statute it doesn't enumerate the specific source types. It just says the regeneration rate is, sorry, I can get you the exact language. It's phrased in terms of the regeneration rate.
Okay.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
So it's like renewable is when you're using a resource slower than it regenerates, so that it has the ability to regenerate.
For instance, we are harvesting less biomass from the forest than grows each year. There's more biomass each year in our forest than we harvest. So
yeah,
that would be counted as renewable. No asterisk, noting a lot of people feel that's controversial, but as an example.
Oh, yeah. So sorry. Here's the exact definition. Energy produced using a technology that relies on a resource that is being consumed at a harvest rate at or below the natural regeneration rate.
So we're using less than it's, and you said that's biomass, wind, solar, and hydro.
Yes, I believe that is true. And I just want to point out that the adding this definition of clean energy would also
8,000.
add this.
Nuclear.
Yes, it would add nuclear.
Right. And so that's 8,002, number 21 is the definition of renewable energy that I just read. It does also have a further caveat under that says no form of nuclear shall be considered renewable.
So we've added clean to expand this to mean.
Yes.
And later on in the village.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we can
Go on to page 6.
go on. Yeah, everybody?
All right, so on page 6, definition number 29 is being amended. So this is changing the renewable energy standard to the clean energy standard. So it will be known as the CES, not the RES. And then number 33 is being added, tradable zero emission credits, or ZECs. Means all of the environmental attributes associated with a single unit of energy generated by a clean energy source, where those attributes are transferred or recorded separately from that unit of energy. The party claiming ownership of the tradable zero emission credits has acquired the exclusive legal ownership of all and not less than all the environmental attributes associated with that unit of energy. And exclusively legal ownership can be verified through an auditable contract path or pursuant to the system established or authorized by the Commission, or any program for tracking and verification of the ownership of the environmental attribute of energy legally recognized in any state and approved by the Commission. So there's a lot of words there, but this is nearly identical to the definition of renewable energy credits. And so it's creating and allowing to be used a type of credit based on zero emissions from an electricity source in the same way that we create renewable energy credits, which are generated when there's energy generated from a renewable source. So it is the same language. I know there's a lot of like legal language in there, but we're creating a transferable credit based on how much energy is generated by a zero emission source.
And then, does this add ZECs to RECs? So we have RECs and ZECs, or does it replace RECs with ZECs?
They're separate.
Separate. Okay, Rep. Kleppner?
Yes, that was my reading as well, that they are separate, and probably not immediately related to any changes we want to make to the bill, but it does occur to me that if we create the second category of ZECs, they may have higher value to some people than RECs do. And there are some forms of energy that qualify for both, like solar, and they may choose to stop generating RECs and start generating ZECs if ZECs have a higher market value.
So I think you'll need to have that conversation, because I don't know if they get to choose if they generate both. I think they are automatically generating both if we adopt this system.
Oh.
And then perhaps the choice is if they retire one or the other. But I think by virtue of being a source that qualifies, they automatically generate both.
So they could sell a REC and a ZEC for the same energy, the same unit of energy.
I think so, and you should probably hear more.
We should hear more. Yeah, because that would screw things up. Just to use a technical term for market disruption.
So we'll, again, just walking through now, and we can just all flag areas of the bill where.
So, and I'll just add as an aside, I have done a little bit of research on this, and I'm not an expert. There are some other states that are using ZECs already. So they aren't fully brainwashed. Yes, Illinois and Connecticut, I think. I think those are the ones that are using it. There may be others, but
Okay,
all right. Moving on to section 3. So section 3 is an amendment to 30 VSA 8004. 8004 is the introductory section to the renewable energy standard currently. And so this is where the change, this is where the start of the changes to the actual text of the renewable energy standard is being changed. So starting on line 20, expansion requirement. The renewable energy standard is expanded to become the CES, the Clean Energy Standard. On to page 7, under this program, a retail electricity provider shall not sell or otherwise provide or offer to sell or provide or offer to sell or provide electricity in the state of Vermont without ownership of sufficient energy produced by clean and renewable energy plants or sufficient tradable renewable energy and zero emission credits from plants whose energy is capable of delivery in New England that reflects the required amounts of clean and renewable energy set forth in 8005. A retail electricity provider may meet the required amounts of clean and renewable energy through eligible tradable renewable energy and zero emission credits that it owns and retires, eligible clean and renewable energy resources with environmental attributes still attached, or a combination of those credits and resources. The Commission shall update the rules that are necessary to allow the Commission and the Department to implement and supervise the further implementation and maintenance of the Clean Energy Standard, RECs and ZECs banking. The Commission shall allow a provider that has met the required amounts of renewable energy or zero emission credits in a given year, commencing with it 2017, to retain the tradable renewable energy or zero emission credits created or produced in excess of what that amount for the application of the provider's required amounts of clean or renewable energy in one of the following 3 years. So this provision already exists. When a utility has their RECs, they can bank them and save them for up to 3 years if they already have enough to meet that year's requirements. And so this would be extending that to the ZECs as well. On page 8, reference to the zero emission credits are also added for reference to the alternative compliance payment, just saying that just like under the existing RES, if they fail to meet all their requirements for renewable energy or zero emission credits, they'll need to pay the compliance payment. On to page 9. Another reference to RES has been changed. RES has been changed to CES. And then section 4. Section 4 is the RES category. So 30 VSA 8005. This is where the tiers of the RES live. So this is amending the RES to the CES and updating the categories within it. So I'm going to start on line 15 because again, those clean references have been added in the first paragraph. But down on line 15, tier 1, total clean and renewable energy. To encourage the economic and environmental benefits of renewable energy, the subdivision establishes for the Clean Energy Standard minimum total amount of clean and renewable energy within the supply portfolio of each retail electricity provider. To satisfy this requirement, a provider may use clean energy generated within New England or renewable energy with environmental attributes attached, or any class of tradable renewable energy credits generated by any renewable energy plant whose energy is capable of delivery in New England. On to page 10. So the required amounts. The amounts of total clean and renewable energy required by this section shall be 63% of each retail electricity provider's annual load during the year beginning on January 1, 2025. Increasing by an additional 7.4% each third January 1 thereafter until reaching 100% on and after January 1, 2030. So first, this is changing what is currently in statute, which is that There's a dual track for tier one currently. 2035, the global foundries and the municipal electricity providers need to reach 100%, but by 2030, all the others need to reach 100%. And so this is putting all the utilities back in the same category, saying that by January 1, 2030, they have to have 100% of their portfolio be clean and renewable energy.
Sorry, can you say that again? Currently, the munis and global foundries.
Have a different deadline. They have until 2035 to reach 100% renewable,
Uh-huh.
and then the other utilities, it's 2030. But this is putting all the utilities in the same deadline. It then goes on to say that the amount of total renewable energy required by this subsection shall be 55% of each utility's annual electricity purchases during the year beginning on January 1, 2027, increasing by an additional 4% each January hereafter until reaching 75% on and after January 1, 2032.
Okay, so this rolls back the brand new res deadlines that we just passed, correct?
Yes. So I think it's not entirely clear, but I think what's happening is because they're saying the utilities will need to get to 100% clean and renewable, but then of that, only 75% needs to be renewable. I think the implication there is that the other 25% is supposed to be then clean. So currently we have all the utilities going to 100% renewable, but this is adding that of that for this program, 75% will be renewable, and I guess the 25% will be the clean.
Okay, so TBD, to learn more about that.
On to page 11. But now this is tier 2. So tier 2 is distributed renewable generation. This is a small new local. First, it's changing the reference to the clean energy standard, and it's not changing the percentages here for what's currently required under tier 2. But then down on line 11, there's new language: avoiding transmission and distribution constraints, procurement by retail electricity providers. Oh, and just to remind you, because I guess we haven't talked about this in a while. So retail electricity provider is what we call the electric utilities for purposes of the renewable energy standard. So retail electricity provider is utility. That's who we're talking about. So the utilities and programs supporting the needs of supporting meeting the requirements of this subdivision 2 shall avoid development of new facilities in generation constrained areas of the distribution and transmission system that would not need to be expanded, but for the addition of additional generation, unless costs associated with development in those generation constrained areas are not passed through to ratepayers through the cost to utilities to purchase the generation or in any other manner. To implement the intent of this section, the commission may update or adopt rules, including rules that require a locational adjuster fee. So this is about, so tier 2 is largely about net metering, although some of the resources do qualify because it's up to, it's up to 5 megawatts. So this is asking that, it's dictating that the utilities shall avoid new facilities in generation constrained areas. But for that would not need to be expanded, but for the addition of additional generation. I'm not entirely sure about the language regarding utility purchases, but it's directed them not to build new small systems in constrained areas.
Sibelia? Did you read that?
Yeah,
Commission being the PUC.
is it about generation or connection to generation?
Well, so the first directive is to avoid development of new facilities. So I'm not entirely sure. I mean, there is something about the connections. I'm not entirely sure how this would work. You need to hear more about this.
Like it's just a little.
So my understanding is that the what's sort of development in those generation pass through. So I think this is around the transmission
Yeah, it has to do with transmission,
connections.
but yeah.
And I think those connections are built into the costs of the project right now.
Yes, and so. Yeah, you'll need to hear more. I
I
don't,
think this is distribution and transmission, so if you had to, over time, increase transmission line load. Can't, under this, you couldn't wouldn't be able to do that unless they paid for it. This is how I'm reading it.
Yeah, it seems to me, the language is a little odd. But I mean, they talk about you cannot develop new facilities in generation constrained areas. Just to say places that don't have generation, you cannot add generation. It seems odd. Unless the transmission and distribution in that area can handle it without upgrades to transmission and distribution, which can always go with big new generation.
Yeah, and also I think, and it also says that they can do it as long as it's not cost transferred to
Do the rate. Yeah.
So
Rep, Helen has hand up.
So it's basically a cost causer pays, if we've heard that term before. If the person that causes the need for the upgrade pays for the upgrade. But I want to point out that this tier 2 is 5 kW and smaller. So if you focus in at 5 kW, 5 megawatts.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 megawatt. I'm sorry, I have to rethink the numbers.
Yeah. Rep Sibilia?
So generation constrained areas is in fact talking about transmission. That's the constraint, right? We have,
I think it is talking about transmission, yeah. Yeah, so maybe it should be transmission constrained areas, to be clear.
I think that's what, I think
That would be clearer. If that is what is in.
Or more clear.
So there's some additional language on this on page 12. A retail electricity provider may petition the commission for relief of the requirements of subdivision C, which is the C, or the associated alternative compliance payment, which may be granted if the provider can demonstrate that it is unable to meet its requirements without extensive upgrades to the transmission or distribution infrastructure that would be borne by the provider's ratepayers. If relief is granted, the retail electricity provider shall be required to instead acquire new renewable generation from facilities that would qualify to meet the requirements of subdivision of tier 4, in addition to the requirements as described in subdivision 4. So this is saying a utility can ask to be exempt from the tier 2 requirements if it's going to cost them too much or they need extensive upgrades, and then they could switch out for tier 4 credits. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
so is the effect of this to make building in state more expensive?
Oh, I don't think that's what the intent is. I think it's trying to say, like, if tier 2 is too expensive, you can just go to tier 4 and not do tier 2. Okay.
Well, it would be too expensive. Yeah. Okay.
Rep Morrow?
Yeah, sorry, because tier 4 is not in state. It's
Mhm.
anywhere in New England. Sorry.
So just these 3 asterisks means there's statute in there that you didn't print out.
Yeah.
Here. But it's referencing 3C, which is not printed.
Yeah, sorry. So that is the percentage requirements for tier 2.
Okay.
Man, if I had a book right now, I would just pull it off the shelf for you. But
We do have them up there now. For those,
I got excited.
those white ones?
Oh,
Is that the statute?
no.
Oh my God, no.
No. No, but you can look it up on your iPad if you want.
No, that's all right. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, sorry.
These are,
Okay. And remind us what tier 4 is.
Tier 4 is new generation within New England, so it's of any size and capable of delivery in New England, but constructed after 2010.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a Hydro-Quebec part.
No.
No. Okay.
No, so sorry. All right. So just take a step back.
Okay.
We haven't talked about the RES in a little while, but there are 5, but 4.5 tiers. Tier 1 is your total portfolio has to have a certain percentage of renewable energy. Tier 2 is that within that, a certain percentage has to come from new small local sources, or what we call distributed generation. So it has to be constructed after 2010, less than 5 megawatts, and capable of connection to your transmission grid.
Has to come from small in-state. Sorry, I'm typing, then you're talking fast. Tier 2 is what?
New small local.
Yeah.
So after 2010, less than 5 megawatts. And I didn't use the word in-state, but yes, essentially in-state.
Yep. Okay. Tier 3.
Tier 3 is energy transformation projects. So you can either do projects that reduce your utility customers' fossil fuel usage, or you can do additional tier 2 credits here.
Okay.
And then tier 4 is our new renewable energy. And so that's projects of any size constructed after 2010 capable of delivery in New England.
Reg Sibilia?
Tier 3, the changes in tier 3 are just reference to the name change.
Correct. And same with tier 4 as well.
And you said 4.5 tiers?
Yeah, because we also have tier 5, and I'm trying to decide if it's a real full tier itself, but it's about after a utility is 100% renewable, making sure that they also include new renewable energy in it. And so it's like, it relates to tier 4. They're similar, but slightly different. It's tier 4, but after they've already reached 100% renewable, making sure their load growth is also new.
Okay.
And what?
Are you questioning, like, is that tier 5 or no?
Well, it's tier 5, but I've been thinking after I wrote it, like, should it be its own tier, or isn't it really an extension of tier 4 because of the same qualifications?
What does it say in the statute?
Well, I wrote it as a 5th subdivision, but like,
Okay.
it has the same
So
qualifications.
you're questioning whether or not it should be tier 5.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying that to people listening out there. I'm just saying it's tier 5, but it is the same qualification as tier 4. So for explanation purposes here, I'm just,
It's a
It is
thought
tier
in our
five.
own mind.
It is tier 5.
It's tier 5.
it's tier 5.
That's all. I'm just looking for confirmation.
It's
from
tier
you.
5. There are no changes being proposed here. I'm just editorializing. I'm sorry.
And there's no need
But
to
if we're
change
gonna rewrite it,
the
then-
reference of the of the name in tier 5.
I mean, I don't know if there is a reference in tier 5.
Okay.
So I don't think so.
Attorney Chekhov, I don't want you to lose track of what time.
Which is 11.
This was just getting fun.
Yeah, we knew we wouldn't get through it. So let us remember where we are. Page 13. And because we are losing our attorney to the Senate temporarily or another committee, we can adjourn, and we built a lot of flex into our schedule today because we weren't sure how we would do on the walkthrough and how we would do on 120.